Hello, colleagues, and welcome to the 12th instalment of the GFOI Information Exchange for this year, or this week for Africa, reflecting on progress that happened on the continent during 2023. My name is Tom Harvey. I'm the manager of the GFOI office. It's my pleasure to be your host today. Thank you all for joining us. We had about 300 people register for this particular event this week, so it's great to have such strong interest from across the GFOI community in finding out about what our partners have been doing to support countries in their forest and carbon monitoring ambitions in Africa during the past 12 months. So I am not going to talk for long. We have a very esteemed list of speakers today, as you'll see here on the screen in front of you. First up, we're going to hear from Remy D'Annunzio from FAO. We'll then hear from Renee Siwe from Silver Carbon, Foster Menza from Sevilla, then Marco van der Linden from the World Bank, and then Louisa from the NICP Satellite Data Program with Planet. And then we'll have some group discussion at the end, or some group Q&A. As always, if you have any questions throughout the webinar, please feel free to type them in the Q&A box, not the chat box, and our panelists will do their best to type some responses to you, and then we may come back to them towards the end as well for some spoken responses and some group discussion from there. So I hope that's all clear. Looking forward to very much hearing the updates from our speakers this week, and then engaging with some of you in the discussion. So without further ado, I'd like to now pass over to Remy from FAO to give an update on the FAO's activities in Africa over the past 12 months. So over to you, Remy. I'll stop sharing my screen so you can share yours.
Thank you so much, Tom. Can you confirm you can hear me?
Yes, loud and clear.
Okay, and I'll start sharing my screen and
Excellent.
putting this in. Can you see that in full screen?
Perfect. Yes, all good. Over to you, Remy.
Thank you very much. Hi, everybody. Nice to see you all again and to be there again, to be there for that session of 2024 on the Africa update on forest monitoring for GFOI. I'll try to be brief and go over the different activities we have in the forestry division of FAO. First, I thought I could give a little regional overview to see which countries we're particularly working on, and try to focus on the main themes we have in terms of monitoring in Africa. And I'll go back into, I'll exemplify some of those points later. But obviously, we will make the presentation available, and all the links are functioning, and I won't be able to cover everything. I wanted to okay. Let's look at a little regional overview. So in Central Africa, we have our projects on drivers, which is probably coming to an end this year, at least in this current state. But we have like nice publications that have come out, and nice results coming from mapping drivers of deforestation and degradation. Congo has just recently submitted an update to its reference level to the UNFCCC, and FAO was part of the technical supports to this effort. So that's a great thing. And in DRC, I particularly wanted to mention that we have engaged with GFOI as a whole, and most of people that are currently in this call today on the reflection about how we're going to go with an update to the National Forest Monitoring System. And I really look forward to this conversation and to build on what's been done before. So yeah, that's my brief on Central Africa. On West Africa, I'd like to mention that Côte d'Ivoire has also updated its reference level to the UNFCCC, and that's a great endeavor. Ghana has submitted at COP last year the first ERPA ever to leaf an emergence. So also a great success from Ghana on this one. We have a lot of activities on around zero deforestation value chains and compliance with the EU regulation, either on Forest Data Partnership or our newly launched project Aim for Forest. And in East and South Africa, maybe the main features are the ongoing support we're providing to Kenya and the continued NFI and consolidated work on Ethiopia, also with GFOI partners. So if you allow me, I'd like to go into a little bit of details on specific areas for those items. So yeah, the first maybe on MRV in general, we have a quite visible impact of the open forest tools, and the open forest is an initiative of free and open source monitoring tools for Earth observation, but in particular for forest monitoring. And those tools have been accompanying countries who have submitted either reference levels or results to the UNFCCC and the FCPF. Right now, we're looking at the UNFCCC submissions in particular, but there's also a bit of that for the FCPF scheme. And I'd like to mention that overall of the African submissions in terms of reference level, 70% of them are mentioning or were based on the open forest tools, and all of the results that have been submitted to the UNFCCC are using them. So that's 15 FRAL and 4 RED+ technical assessments that have been submitted for results that are using them. So I think that's really nice measure of the impact of the tools that are been developed by FAO with partners and all GFOI partners in general. Okay, I wanted to mention the Aim for Forest project, which is a new kid on the block, really, in FAO. Aim for Forest is a program funded by the UK. It's targeting, it's a 5-year project with essentially strengthening global activities on forest monitoring. We aim to provide technical support to over 20 countries. And so far we have 4 that have been specifically targeted in Africa, but there could be more, there will be more. And we just operationalized the project mid last year, and we're going to go until 2028 at the very least. And we have different focus on different countries, but we're looking at forest data for better resource management, assessing NFMS, and moving on this. So this is, for example, activities we have in Kenya. We have constant MRV focus throughout Aim for Forest. So all the countries we are working with have a MRV component for mitigation, but we're also looking at improving data accessibility for zero deforestation commodities, for instance. This is what's currently happening in Uganda and Ghana. And finally, we also have a component in Aim for Forest on ecosystem restoration and monitoring thereof. So Aim for Forest, as I mentioned, is a new project. is very welcome from the forestry division side. You can find more information on the links, and I can provide maybe those later in the chat. Okay, on the drivers of deforestation and degradation in Central Africa, this is funded by Coffee. We finished the first phase from 2015 to 2020, and we are currently updated numbers up to 2022. All the data is being made available publicly. It's both the maps and the point-based analysis for visualization, which is heavily relying on the planet data, for instance. All that is out there. It's available. We published a paper late November in Land Use Policy. It's called Small Scale Agriculture Continues to Drive Deforestation in Congo Basin. Feel free to check the publication out. And we have an interesting webpage with nice web stories showing all the work we've done on drivers. So you're also welcome to have a look and come back to us if any questions. Next, we also are involved in mapping activities, especially for cocoa and for those shaded crops commodities that are causing issues or challenges, at least, in regulatory mechanisms. In particular, in Cameroon, we're involved in the Sustainable Cocoa Initiative project led by the EU. This is work we're doing together with EFI JRC, and both Ministry of Forest and Fauna in Cameroon and the University of Yaoundé. We're aiming at mapping cocoa for 2020, which is the UDR cutoff date, using Sentinel-1, 2, and Planet data. And we will be partnering with JRC and partners to do the independent validation. Of course, using open source, transparent, and transferable methods that we have so far developed within the CAFE sphere. So also exciting work that has started there. On MRV in general and area estimation, specifically on sample-based area estimation, two updates. First is that the white paper that was initially started under GFOI banner, but is now being transferred to Aim for Forest. The paper's been finalized. It's been edited. It's almost ready to be out. If we had had the meeting in 2 days, I could have provided the link today. I hope it's coming this week. So keep tuned. We will forward the link as soon as it's out there. But know that the paper itself is there, and it's been finalized. So I'm happy to share the PDF. It's just we don't have a link to share that yet. So let me know if you want to have it like really hot off the press. And I'd like to mention that we have also started work with Wageningen University to take into account the recommendations that were made through the GFOI process consultation on the white paper to improve this. We've also updated the notebooks and tools to implement that, and you have the list of countries where it's currently being used. Okay, quick update on West Africa and the use of JEDI. We have ongoing collaboration with FORIG, Oxford University, and the University of Maryland. Forest inventory has been finalized late last year. We've collected the ELS data, and we're currently working on the regional model. The idea will be to have a regional JEDI calibrated biomass model available, and we will, from that, derive biomass maps. So all exciting stuff happening on that sphere too, and potentially that could be a source of data to have more precise and better tuned emission factors, for instance. I'll try to go quick. I know I have limited time left. We're working with the European Commission and JZ on the SAFE project of the Zero Deforestation hub from the Team Europe initiative on a convergence of evidence approach to forest monitoring for the EU regulation on deforestation. The code is already published. It's out there. And we're going to be partnering with key partners on this, AgStack, the Google Earth Engine team, and using different tools from the Open Forest suite. I won't go into too many details, but feel free to check out what we've done on the under the Forest Data Partnership banner on the WISP tool. And I would like to announce that we're currently having a WISP implementation in ground to implement convergence of evidence for the regulation, and we will be releasing this in the ground tool that we're co-developing with Google. Ground is an open source map first collection platform on mobile devices with really nice increased access to offline resources. And this will be tested in the ground in the coming month and will be officially released at the International Day of Forest on the 21st of March, occurring here in FAO HQ. So more information, feel free to shoot me a line. I'm particularly working on those issues right now. To finish, I'd like to mention the CBID project, which is coming to phase 2, starting from just now until the end of 2026. We're going to be specifically carrying out NFI massive online courses in multiple languages with all those and producing knowledge products. We will be increasing the NFI networks at regional level and have a couple of country activities, in particular disseminating NFI data through our FAM, through our microdata catalog. And we have at the moment targeting Ethiopia, Liberia, Zambia, Congo, and DR Congo. I've put all the links again in this slide, and I think I've spoken too much, so I will stop here and hand over to you, Tom, and I guess René is coming after me.
Excellent. Thank you, Remy. That was perfect timing. You didn't speak too much at all. That was all fantastic and very interesting. An enormous amount that FAO is doing in Africa. Brilliant to see. The results with the uptake of the open forest tools. I mean, 100% of REDD+ results submitted were using the open forest tools, and 70% of FREL submissions. I think that's a really good reflection of the effectiveness of the work that you and your colleagues at FAO are doing. And of course, very exciting to see the new projects with Aim for Forest and CBRT Phase 2. So thank you so much for that, Remy. There's already a few questions rolling in for you in the Q&A, and I'm sure there'll be many more to come. So please do take a look at those. We had a question about sharing of slides. We are recording this session, and the video will go up on the GFOI website in the coming days, weeks, as we do all three of these sessions, so probably after next Tuesdays. And there'll be a newsletter and a report that goes out. If anybody wants a particular copy of someone's slides, please feel free to get in touch and we'll share those with you. And Remy, sorry we missed you being able to share the paper by 2 days. Had I have known that, I know there's a lot of people interested in the sample-based area estimation paper. Had I have known, we may have nearly delayed this session by 2 days for you, but I'm sure we're happy to help promote that to the community. And again, if people want to get a hot off the press version, feel free to contact myself or Remy to request that, and can hopefully share a link in a couple of days. But thank you very much, Remy. And now it's my pleasure to hand over to René Siwe from the US Forest Service, speaking on behalf of the Silver Carbon Program in Africa. So over to you, René.
Yeah, thanks, Tom. Let me just share my screen.
Sure, it's coming up now. There it is. Perfect, René. Over to you. We can see and hear you perfectly.
Okay, yeah. Good afternoon, everyone. And yeah, it's a pleasure connecting again with everyone virtually. So I'll be providing updates on our silver carbon activities, mostly which are taking place mostly in Central Africa. Would like just to acknowledge the presence of my colleagues that are also working on the Silver Carbon Program on this call, Destin, Eugene, and also Ashley. Nice to have you, and if there's, hopefully you would help also to react to any questions that we may have regarding the activities. So I kind of like structured our intervention into, I'll talk about what I consider what are mostly ongoing and completed activities, and then thereafter I will talk about activities that are still to come. So first, I would just like to make reference to the work that we are doing with the CNRED here in the DRC, where we are working with them to establish a REDD+ registry. This is almost complete from the technical point. The registry portal is already ready. I think we are now working with the team in the DRC to ensure that there is a good handover from the IT consultancy firm that worked with the DRC government in establishing the portal. And we would then be organizing a kind of like awareness raising session here in the DRC, where national stakeholders of the REDD+ process will be invited, and a demonstration of the registry will be made to the national folks. The next activity I wanted to talk about is a study that is actually ongoing on the institutional arrangements and guidelines for nested MRV. As you're all aware, I think in the DRC, we have REDD+ programs that are taking place at variable scales at jurisdictional level and project level, and also monitoring which is taking place at national level. So we are actually also there working also with the DRC government and establishing guidelines that would enable the country to set up a nesting framework. Another study which we carried out, but this one is actually it's complete, was to assess options for high forest low deforestation countries to access climate finance. The case study was actually Republic of Congo. This report has been finalized. We intend to first of all socialize the report or the results of the report with decision makers in the Republic of Congo before actually disseminating the report then to the wider audience. So yeah, this is something which will definitely become, in terms of socializing the report and with the decision makers, that is something which would be done in the coming months. And hopefully after that process, if there is if there are any modifications or amendments or proposals that are made by the ROC government would integrate that in the report and publish that for the wider audience. We are also supporting the Republic of Congo in coming up with an operational definition for forest degradation. That component of the work has been completed, and now we would intend to still continue working with them to see how forest degradation can also be incorporated into the national greenhouse gas emission accounting. The next program or project I wanted to mention is the Central Africa Women's Initiative for Climate Action. This is a program that we launched since 2021 with the objective of strengthening the capacity of young women in Central Africa on greenhouse gas accounting, and also ensuring the enhancing the involvement of young women in climate action as in general. We just launched the third and the fourth phases of the program, which is now expanded to the 6 countries in Central Africa. So the two Congos, Gabon, Cameroon, Central African Republic, and Equatorial Guinea. We've just recently recruited the fourth cohorts in these countries. So 30 in Equatorial Guinea, 30 in Central Africa, and 20 respectively in the other 4 countries. If you're not aware of this program, maybe just to give you a brief summary, the program entails organizing national workshops on introduction to climate change, which the cohort of the program have the opportunity to participate. After that, we select 5 women from each of the countries, and they're given the opportunity to take a rigorous program on greenhouse gas accounting, which is offered by the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute, at the end of which they have diploma certificates on greenhouse gas MRV. We also organize a series of webinars on different topics related to climate change, which the women in the region that are participating in the program have the opportunity to also attend. Also, in an effort to provide opportunities for the women to engage or to kickstart professional activities in the climate change sector, we work closely with national and international institutions that are in the region to provide internship opportunities also to the women. And lastly, we also give the women the opportunity to take part in national and international conferences that have to do with climate change related issues. We could provide more information for those that are interested. We could share some links and also some fact sheets on the WICA program. Next, in terms of ongoing and completed activities, I wanted to mention an activity which is currently ongoing in Cameroon, which is estimating greenhouse gas, assessing land use and land cover changes and the associated greenhouse gas emissions using the Correct Earth online tool. That is a process which we launched in Cameroon almost a year ago, but there were some institutional issues that led to some significant delays, but we relaunched that last December, and the data collection process using the Correct Earth online tool will commence in next month, in February. And hopefully, we hope to round up this process maybe by June this year. To mention also that in Equatorial Guinea and Central African Republic, this is part of our silver carbon expansion. We've worked closely with the coordinators of the national communication to identify national experts that are involved in greenhouse in the national communications, preparation of the national communications, and we've given enrolled these national experts to take courses also that are offered by the Greenhouse Gas Management Institute as part of an effort to strengthen also the capacity of national experts in UNFCCC reporting. This is not a directly silver carbon related activity, but I just thought it's worthwhile to mention the support that through one of our programs, the CAPI program, we are providing support to the DRC government in elaborating a national peatland strategy. And still within our CAPI program, we are also working with the peatland management unit of the DRC also to to a nationwide mapping, peatland mapping, and also assessing carbon stock within peatland areas in the DRC. So looking forward, what are our planned activities? I would like to mention national forest assessments, assessing the progress in setting up national forest monitoring systems in Equatorial Guinea and in Central African Republic, which we intend to carry out in the next 2 to 3 months to assess the gaps in the system, and that would ensure that we can better, that will better inform our future silver carbon planning and technical assistance that we can provide to both countries. We would commence also with provide a request, responding to a request from the Cameroon government, and also working with them to establish a REDD+ registry. We intend to organize a regional workshop to enable the countries in the Central African region to exchange their experiences in setting up their national monitoring systems. And a separate workshop still on regional exchange would also target exchanging on the UNFCCC reporting requirements. And lastly, I'd like to mention, because of the unique linguistic nature of Equatorial Guinea being the only African country, which Spanish-speaking African country, we also intend in the scope of silver carbon to organize a South-South knowledge exchange between Equatorial Guinea and some Latin American countries. So yeah, that's it for silver carbon updates from Central Africa. Thanks for your attention and looking forward to your questions. Over to you, Tom.
Wonderful. Thank you, Renee. That's a fantastic update on a wide range of issues silver carbon is working on in Africa, many of which will be of interest to different partners, from registries to studies on options on HFLD to the definitions of degradation. These are all topics the GFOI community has been tackling for a while now. So great to see silver carbon trying to address some of these practically on the ground in countries, and great to hear a bit more about the WICA program, the Women's Initiative for Climate Action. We had some of the women from that program at the GFY plenary last year, which was truly fantastic to see, and certainly commend Silver Carbon for taking a focus on that very important issue for our community. Thank you very much, Renee. I suspect you'll have a few questions as well. If anybody has questions, please do pop them in the Q&A box. There's been a few going off, so thank you for that. One other thing, just wanted to point out, all of the work that GFY partners are doing in countries, we hope to capture them all in the GFY inventory of activities, which is an online portal on the GFY website that shows all of the activities that are reported to us that are happening in all of the countries. My colleague Madison has just posted a link to this in the chat. So if you're interested in finding out a bit more details about what has been happening in Africa over the years before 2023, please feel free to check that out as well. We do have very close to 100 people on the line today, which is great. So thank you all for taking the time for joining us to find out about what's been happening in Africa during 2023. But now it is my pleasure to hand over to Foster Mensah from the US Severe program for his update for the past year. So over to you, Foster. I'll let you know when we can see your slides.
Thank you very much, Tom. Let me share my slide.
Sure. Yep, they are loading now. And if you just press play, yep, perfect. Foster, over to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Tom. And once again, it's a pleasure to be here. My name is Foster Mensah. I'm based here in the University of Ghana in Accra. To begin with, I want to acknowledge our partners, University of Boston University, James Madison University, and University of Florida. We are also locally collaborating with Arusha, Ghana, and ProForest Africa. And then obviously the Forestry Commission. We are exploring some collaborative efforts with the Alliance Biodiversity and CIAT, a member of the CGR. By way of overview, we have been harnessing EO technology for land cover and land use monitoring. developing some innovative approaches for land degradation, map forest degradation, and forest disturbance. There has been, during the period, some capacity building, technical capacity building of the hub members in the West African sub-region. And we are also, like I mentioned earlier, in the discussion with the CIAT to develop some collaborative effort to empower communities for forest monitoring and conservation. So as part of the Severe West Africa program, CESGIS, the center I belong or work for in the University of Ghana, have been developing a data portal, a map portal for the mining activities, small-scale artisanal mining activities in Ghana. And so this is still in development, but as you can see, we have been able to map small-scale mining footprints from 2015 to 2022. And as you can see in the red boxes, those are the hotspots within the forest zone. And we also have been able to estimate the area that has been mined out since 2015 to 2022. And as you can see, there has been a steady rise from 2017 to 2022 and slightly coming down from 2017 to 2021, slightly coming down in 2022. As I mentioned, we have been working with the Boston University and the James Madison University as part of the NASA Severe Applied Science program. And so they have been working with us closely to develop area estimation and also monitoring land change and forest degradation in West Africa. The idea is to develop an operational near real-time monitoring system for forest disturbance in the sub-region, and also to be able to monitor and attribute forest disturbance using the CCDC SMA algorithm. Working with the University of Florida as part of also the AST, the NASA Severe Applied Science Team program, University of Florida is working with the Severe West Africa to integrate socioeconomic and EO data to characterize land degradation dynamics in Ghana. And so, as you can see, these are the objectives of the project and the expected deliverables. There has been, during the period, capacity building, technical capacity has been built in the region. Last November, we had the whole team from Boston University, University of Florida, and the SCO in Huntsville, Alabama, here in Accra, to train members of the hub from Burkina Faso, Senegal, Nigeria, Ghana, Niger, and also fifth one. So the training was based on the severe carbon pilot, the SCAP. We were trained in the ensemble approach to estimate greenhouse gas emissions, and also the AST teams build capacity in using GEE for land cover, land change mapping, time series analysis using satellite data, and change detection with the CCDC SMA algorithm, and also area estimation and accuracy assessment. Final slide. Like I mentioned, we have been working with CIAT to develop pilot methodology to monitor the impact of conservation interventions in terms of payment for ecosystem services. CIAT is already on the ground in one of the close to one of the forest reserves in the Ashanti region. And the idea for our collaboration to see how we can scale this or we can extend this to the heart of the small-scale artisanal mining areas and see how this can be applied. So this is my last slide, and thank you very much for your attention.
Excellent. Thank you, Foster. Fantastic to have you and Severe involved, and to see the great work that you guys are doing in Africa and through the other hubs, of course, all around the world. And I know, like with our other speakers, there'll be a lot of interest from the GFOI community. I think one of our panelists has just asked you a question as well. So thank you very much for the update. Pleased to see you doing some work on the ecosystem services monitoring as well. That's a growing topic which our community has been turning its mind to as well. So very pleased to see that Severe is doing some work on that in Africa as well. Any questions for Foster, please pop them in the Q&A box, and we will come back to him for a bit of a discussion towards the end. But thank you, Foster. And now it's my pleasure to pass over to Marco van der Linden from the World Bank. Over to you, Marco. I'll let you know when we can see your slides.
Thanks, Tom, and hello, everybody.
There we go. They're loading. And we can see them. Over to you, Marco.
Thanks. So, hello, everybody. So my name is Marco van der Linden. I'm a consultant at the World Bank, and I'm part of the team that manages two funds that make result-based payments for emission reductions from forest, the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility and the Biocarbon Fund, the ISFL program. And on the screen, you see the portfolio of these two funds in Africa. The main purpose of these funds is to make result-based payments for emission reductions, as I said. So over the past years, we've been supporting all of these countries that you see on the screen, together with a lot of the GFOI partners that we already heard from or will be hearing from afterwards, in building up their MRV capacity and their ability to actually report on those emission reductions and develop baselines and reference levels. So the nice thing is that we're now getting to the point where we're actually starting to see the results. So on the Forest Carbon Partnership Facility, most of the programs are now at the stage where they have submitted their monitored results. Mozambique being the one that's sort of leading the pack, they already went to two. So they've submitted results for two monitoring periods, and both of those have been verified and payments have been received. And they're now looking at their possible third monitoring report. They're being followed by Ghana, which is currently working on this. Well, the second monitoring report has been completed. It's currently going to a verification. So we're expecting that that second payment will be made before June this calendar year. And then other countries are following. So Madagascar also did their first monitoring report. Payments were made. And now I think the next monitoring period is, so we're sort of in the middle of that period. So they will be preparing a second monitoring report probably next calendar year. And then the other countries, Côte d'Ivoire, DRC, Republic of Congo, they're in that middle of that verification process. The other fund, the Biocarbon Fund, ISFL, the Initiative for Sustainable Forest Landscapes, is a little bit behind the FCPF. Now we have two countries, Ethiopia and Zambia. Ethiopia has submitted a baseline that has been independently validated, and they're now preparing their first monitoring report, which we're expecting by June 2024. And then Zambia, as well, the baseline validation has been concluded, and the expectation is that they will start preparing their first monitoring report in 2025. So based on these all these reports and the verification of those reports, we're starting to see some common issues when it comes to the capacity that we've built and the MRV systems that we helped to develop in these countries. So we wanted to share those with you. So in terms of activity data, so what we see is, you know, I don't think that comes as a surprise for anybody, that when when countries submit their data and somebody else tries to independently verify that, so the term VVB stands for validation verification body, so that's the independent verifier. In a lot of cases, they ask for samples taken in collect earth, and they take a look and see if the interpretation was correct. So we start obviously seeing cases where the VVB sees a different land use or a different land use change than what was reported by the country. So that clearly points to consistency issues, but also to Q&A issues when it comes to data collection. Q&A we also see back in the next bullet point, where the countries have developed SOPs, together with a lot of the GFOI partners, and also using the the templates that have been provided by GFOI. But often the countries doesn't exactly do what they said they would do in the SOP. So the correct implementation of the SOPs is sometimes a bit of an issue. Often what happens is, you calculate the number of samples that you need to meet a certain uncertainty level. But then when countries do their calculations, they don't use all the samples. Sometimes, they got dropped out during the QA/QC process. Sometimes other things happen. But that process is not always super transparent. So the person doing the independent verification, they see somewhere, okay, we're collecting 1,000 samples, but in the end, the calculation only happens with 900. And then the big question is, okay, what happened to those 100? And being clear on that is obviously crucial. Then the lack of clear definitions of possible transitions. So that's related to the first bullet point. It's about the interpretation of what you see when you use a tool like collect earth, or even if you use some of the algorithms that were mentioned earlier, like CCCD. What is the transition that we see? What's the definition of the different land uses? So obviously, all countries have been having a lot of discussions about definitions, but still we're seeing that the interpretation of those land use definitions and the transitions between those definitions creates problems when somebody else starts questioning that. Then stratification. So we're talking big areas. You stratify that to to apply different emission factors to different forest types. That often tends to be a problem. So the underlying data to do the stratification is usually it's a bit weak, or the country has lacks the capacity to explain how exactly the stratification was done. And I think that's also an issue because a lot of countries, I think, for that stratification, for forest type maps, that they rely on a lot of the old work that has been done in the past by other people, and that then makes it difficult to interpret what was done there. Then looking at the emission factors, we sort of see a similar problem that unless countries have done a new national forest inventory, when the independent verifier comes, they will often ask for the underlying raw data that's resulted into the calculation of the emission factor of the biomass stocks. And often that raw data is not available anymore. So sometimes it was because a forest inventory was done in the past and the data is sort of lost. Sometimes the forest inventory is done more recently, but the data isn't properly stored. So I think that's something that a lot of countries tend to underestimate, as we are going from, just monitoring to monitoring, reporting, and verification, be it for carbon markets or going forward under the UNFCCC for your biannual transparency reports, etc. It's going to be important that there's storage of the data so people can come in and check what you've done. So that sort of data handling, data storage, making sure that in 5 years or 10 years somebody can still access that data, also to create consistent time series. I think that's something that we probably underestimated as we build capacity in countries. Then there's the obvious mistakes in units being reported, secondary sources being used, where there's a bit of discussion between the verifier and the country. Is it conservative? Are they properly justified? Are they meeting sort of quality requirements where our funds usually require tier 2 approaches? And then just plain mistakes in the application of the emission factor before and after the conversion. So yeah, it's a bit of a general overview, but I thought it was nice to put this in. As we are working with countries, we start to see our lessons learned also when the data that we collect is being subject to scrutiny by others. So that was mostly on the portfolio and the countries that we're supporting. Then the World Bank is also doing some sort of more general, higher level support on MRV. One thing that we're working on is what we call MRV 2.0. Some of you might have heard about that in other seminars or other forums, but it's basically an effort to see if we can use more integrated and automated methods to support these MRV processes. Take some of the human input out and automate basically both the data collection and the processing and the QA QC. And one of the reasons I mentioned it here in this webinar is that we've been testing it out in Mozambique. So Mozambique was one of the countries where we looked at proof of concepts together with Severa, European Space Agency, Cal Poly and Amazon Web Services. So there was a data collection campaign in the field, and we were trying to link that to terrestrial laser scanning as part of the effort to automate the data input. The effort was made. There was a lessons learned workshop in Rome in November. Some of you might have been there. And basically, what we found, the overall conclusion was that that idea of fully automating the MRV process is not viable yet. There was some issues around the field collection that's needed, and also in how countries want to use systems. They're obviously, it's important for countries that it's not a black box, but you actually understand what's going on. So at the moment, what we're thinking about is seeing if we can use that to improve efficiency in the reporting and the verification point, so the part at the end. But it looks like in terms of data collection, there's still some work to be done before we can further automate that. So yeah, that was the quick overview for Africa from the World Bank. And if there's any questions, please put them in the Q&A. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Marco. Another fantastic overview, and thank you for including those common issues. They were some really useful, thought-provoking points, and they've already stimulated some good discussion in the Q&A. I'd actually refer all panelists to Jenny Wong's question in particular about, we see these issues and what can we as a GFOI community do to try and solve those. I might ask some of you to maybe speak to that during the Q&A at the end, and a couple of other good questions for you there in the chat as well, Marco. So thank you for including those. You've clearly got people thinking. And excellent to see an update on the work on MRV 2.0. Interesting to hear the statement. The full automation of MRV is not yet viable. An interesting outcome that I presume a few of our GFOI partners will be interested in hearing and perhaps discussing further. So thank you very much, Marco. Any further questions for him, please pop them in the Q&A. But now I would like to pass over to Louisa from the NICFI High-Res Data Program, also from Planet. So over to you, Louisa. And we also have Charlotte Bishop on the line from KSAT, who will be available to answer any questions or jump in as needed.
So like Tom said, my name is Luisa Teixeira. I am representing the NICFI Satellite Data Program. I am a program manager at Planet. And I'm just here to share a little quick summary of what happened in 2023 with the program and especially with the users of the program that are either based and working in the African region. So next slide, please. So I think most of you actually are familiar with the program, but just in case some people are not, I just want to give you a quick overview. So the NICFI Satellite Data Program is a result of Norway International Forest and Climate Initiative, and it aims to make satellite data available to anyone that is working to reduce and reverse the loss of tropical forests. Next slide, please. So the program includes a variety of high-resolution, high-frequency satellite images at no cost to the user. The bulk of the program is made of mosaics of the tropics, like in the image that you can see now. And these mosaics are mostly constituted of planet imagery at 4.77 meter pixel resolution, and they are released at monthly rates. Next slide, please. The program was very well received when it was first launched, and here we actually have the full sequence of since the beginning in 2020 to today. As you can see, the intake of users, which is the small blue bars that you can see at the bottom, has been pretty constant since the beginning. And the use of the tiles here as an example, the streaming of the mosaics has been increasing more or less regularly throughout time. We have at the moment more than 26,000 registered users. And users that here, I put a number of users in Africa, and it's about 1,000. But I just want to contextualize this, that these are the information that we have on users upon registration, which actually doesn't really translate into the impact of the program in the region, like I will show you a little bit further on. So next one, please. So here, one of the methods that we use to collect information about the program is through user surveys. We ran 2 surveys last year in 2023, asking the community to share more about their work with the program's data and to collect feedback and suggestions. We had 781 responses through the whole program area, so from the Americas, Africa, and Asia. And specifically to Africa-related activities, we had 183 survey responses. And it's about these ones that I'm going to be telling you a little bit more about. Next one. The countries with more recorded use cases are Ethiopia, Kenya, Uganda, Ghana, DRC, Tanzania, Mozambique, and Nigeria. You can see here that there's a lot more names in this chart. And it seems that we have a pretty good distribution from West Africa to East Africa and covering the main hotspots of deforestation and of biodiversity in the region, which is a very good sign in terms of the integration of the data into people's work streams. Next slide, please. When we look at the topics in which the users are applying the program data, we see there's a large focus on not really surprising themes, but it's always good to recap them. So land use policies, transparency, but also carbon markets and international support structures are coming up frequently, as well as international forest crime. And when we look into use cases, so maybe from a little bit more technical perspective, we see that the most common areas are land cover and land use mapping, forest area and change estimation, and deforestation detection and alerting. And here I would like to point out that although it's still at a small percentage, we have been noticing an uptick in applications that refer to indigenous peoples and local communities, which we feel is a very positive sign of let's say, how the program is really going from sector to sector and across different types of users. Next slide, please. Okay, and now I just want to share some specific examples of work that have been done by the user community in the region. So here we see 2 research papers that focus on mapping trees rather than only forest cover. which is made possible by the higher resolution of this data set. So we see that on the left side, I'm pretty sure everyone's familiar with this work that's focused on mapping trees outside of forest or area classified as forest. And on the right side, we see an example of a country-wide mapping of individual trees for the calculation of carbon stocks. And these are I selected them because I feel they're particularly impactful in terms of forest monitoring and associated greenhouse gases estimations. And these could be quite relevant to opening funding avenues for governments. Next slide, please. And here you have two other examples. Actually, on the left is the same, I believe, the same research paper and work that Remy mentioned earlier in Kafi region that looked into patterns of deforestation and drivers of deforestation in the Congo Basin. And on the right side, we have a similar focus paper that does at scale identification and of drivers of deforestation and land use change across the whole African region covered by the NICFI base maps. So both of these take advantage of the fact that we have high resolution imagery, but also a high frequency of image availability, and can rely on time series to extract more insights and more in-depth information about the changes and the patterns of land use and compare them across different regions within Africa. Next slide, please. And because we have such a large variety of users, and I can't really share with you everything that's happening in the 183 testimonials that we've collected last year, I would still like to leave you with a few highlights or a few specific reports. These are not direct, they're slightly paraphrased because I thought it would be more fair to anonymize the people. I didn't want to expose their opinion directly. But I think they illustrate how things have been changing from their perspective in terms of using this type of data and the kind of results they've been having. So we have here some examples that illustrate how governmental units are using the program's data to improve their deforestation baseline monitoring, regional and zonal greenhouse gas baseline estimations. We've also learned about the importance of accessing the NICFI data in Google Earth Engine and Collect Earth, a tool by FAO, that facilitates and improves significantly their workflows, such as for the separation between deforestation and false alerts. And this is actually mentioned really often by our users. We have also heard from not-for-profit sector how the data has been used to support landscape restoration programs in Africa, and especially to visualize the impact of these projects and to make information available and readily understandable to community groups. And finally, having access to high resolution and timely data has been very useful for many of our users in conducting investigations of criminal activities, which is something that we find. I'm personally really happy to hear about these use cases, and I hope they really come to fruition as processes proceed in time. Next slide, please. And to finalize, I would just like to leave you with some information about our upcoming events and to remind you that we welcome your suggestions, feedback, and ideas. If you ever feel that the program and its team can be of use and of help, please let us know, reach out. We're really open to hear your thoughts and to just support your initiatives in whatever they may be. I would also like to remind you that you can always find updates about our user community as well as the program on our account on X and former Twitter. And I would like to also bring your attention to both our resources page inside Planet University, but also to our recently created GitHub that has two repositories, one focusing on code, workflows, and other automatizations that are actually created by users, and we're just collecting them there. If you have something to share that you wanted to highlight, please let us know. And the same thing for research work. We also have a repository collecting those. So if you're ever looking for something or have a question, can this be applied to a problem in a certain region? Maybe go there. Maybe someone has already looked into it and has a solution and an answer. And I think that's my last slide. Next one is basically our contact information. I'd just like to thank you for your attention. Do reach out to us, send us an email. And I look forward to your questions in the discussion.
Excellent.
And thank you,
Thank you
Tom.
so much. Thank you so much, Louisa. Sorry, I realized I wasn't on mute and I had my video on then. I was too busy sharing your slides. I hope I wasn't making too many noises in the background. But lovely overview. Great to see the continued success of the NICFI satellite data program. And really nice to see not only some of those testimonials, but some of the, I guess, the applications that the data is being used for, including the you said land cover mapping and land use mapping, as well as forest area and change estimation. It's really good to see, as well as all of the other things such as transparency in markets and what have you. So, thank you very much, Louisa. I'm going to stop sharing. I haven't been monitoring the Q&A during that session because I couldn't see my screen, but building on this point, so that's the end of our presentations for now. We will now go on to the sort of group Q&A. So now's the time if you had any outstanding questions to our participants out there. There's still nearly 100 of you online, which is great to see. Please do put them in the Q&A and we can refer to them as we go. But building on the points from Louisa's slide there about the use of these products, I guess I wanted to maybe ask a question of maybe Renee and Remy about what in your experience of countries in Africa, why are countries monitoring their forests and carbon resources? What is the main application? Is it UNFCCC reporting? Is it informing policy and management? Is it for accessing results-based payments? What are you seeing from your interactions with countries that are the main motivations for countries to be monitoring their forests and carbon? I think, this question, your answer might have changed in the past 2 or 3 years as what it did a few years back. So just interested to see where we're at today. What is the main driver for countries in monitoring their forests? Remy, you're
first go at that.
Sure.
Okay. No, that's a really good question. I'd like to bring the perspective from my side where I've seen actually a shift in this over the past years. And after decades of trying to address drivers of deforestation degradation through basically voluntary approaches, essentially carbon finance monitored, we see the emergence of regulatory approaches to directly address drivers of deforestation degradation, in particular expansion of agriculture. And we see this very clearly now. We have more and more interest and focus of countries to set up forest monitoring systems that can serve both purposes of reporting for carbon finance, but also to address compliance with regulations, for instance. I'm pretty sure everybody's aware of the European regulation on zero deforestation and the challenges that it implies and the issues that are associated with it. But definitely we have emergence of also those topics. It doesn't mean that all the work that we're doing on carbon finance and on MRV is not relevant. The examples that René has shown on everything that's being done on nesting, for instance, in DRC and all those issues, the updates of the reference level, the payment under the FCPF and or emergent and art trees, all that is also showing that this is materializing somehow. But I do see an emergence and a new focus on those regulatory approaches, which is really interesting.
Excellent. Thanks, Remy. That's good to see. It's perhaps a maturity of our section a little bit as we're able to support monitoring applications for multiple different purposes and perhaps some more, I guess, integrated applications to core government operations and market operations more broadly beyond just carbon markets, but how the global market functions and how people are looking to use, I guess, broader financial incentives to reduce deforestation. Renee, do you have any views on this, on your work from the silver carbon side of things?
Yeah, maybe I just wanted to just to add that I think the whole discussions around access to carbon markets, we're seeing. I mean, it hasn't started impacting on the I would say the monitoring context, but you see a shift in terms of requests and questions that are being asked, especially from people that have been doing work at at project level, and that are seeing probably that there are opportunities for them to access results-based payment, whether through voluntary markets or through Article 6. And then you have these I would say project developers are actually asking them questions in terms like what do we need to do in terms of reporting for us to be capable of accessing then any results-based payment opportunities that are out there. And to be honest, in the meantime, I don't think there is any clear response to that, because from a national level, we are still scrambling with putting in place functioning and operational national forest monitoring systems. But this is something which I think moving forward, you will see not only questions in that regards, but maybe efforts in trying to assess the performance of projects and programs at project level. And this also explains the reason why countries definitely also need to think about putting in place the nesting frameworks, if at all these projects and programs at subnational scale would have to be compensated in some manner. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks, Renee. Great to get your perspective as well. I have to say, I've been very impressed of the ability of the GFOI community to adapt. I mean, many of the products and tools that we have used for many years as a community were developed with REDD+ or UNFCCC reporting in mind, and it's all, carbon markets, and it's been great to see partners being able to, shift and adapt to ensure that those products and tools have far greater use and application beyond just those handful of reasons as to why a country may choose to monitor their forests. Foster, I wanted to get your views on this. I know Severe takes a slightly broader focus to its work than just forests and carbon, to include multiple geospatial applications. But in your work with countries in the Africa region, what is the main motivation, do you think, for countries improving their mapping capabilities and particularly those of forest lands?
Yes, thank you very much, Tom. As you're well aware, the Severe program is all about making geospatial information widely available and to support policy, and also to help the institutions build capacity and also fill the information gap that we have had over the years. And so the Severe program has been very helpful, very useful. We are beginning to see some impacts in certain regions. Like you mentioned, we are not only in the forest zone. In Ghana, for instance, we are also looking at the savanna ecosystem because of some of the drivers that are in that ecosystem. We are talking about charcoal production, and so we are beginning to identify the charcoal production spots and also see how that impact deforestation and woodland degradation and also land degradation in those areas. We are also looking at crop monitoring in some of the countries. We are looking at flash floods. Some of these things indirectly impact the ecosystem, and so in an integrated manner, we are looking at how we can put all this together in an information portal and make it available to the institutions that will need them. The other motivation is also, like you rightly, and I think Remy alluded to that, we are gradually being caught up by the regulations, and we need to comply. And so we need to get our act together and make sure that our information systems are up and running. And so it's very critical that we have access to these kinds of technologies so that we can build that capacity and be able to respond appropriately. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks, Foster. Great to get your perspective on what some of the broader development motivations may be. Marco, before we go to the question for you about the common issues that you raised, I wanted to put this question to you too. It's perhaps a clearer answer for the World Bank in terms of you have funds and you're trying to support the disbursement of performance-based funds. But in your conversations with countries in Africa, to what degree is your impression that countries are monitoring their forests and carbon resources purely to unlock performance-based funds, or are they looking to use those funds to increase their forest and geospatial mapping capability to improve broader governance or land management regulations? Or is it purely your interactions? Is it all about unlocking the results-based payments? And then I'm going to go to the common issues and the questions from Jenny, but your initial thoughts on that, Marco.
Sure. One thing to understand is that what we show here in the GFOI context is just a very small part of what the World Bank does when it comes to data, etc. There's other parts of the bank that very much look at use of data on forest land use in general when it comes to supporting the governments, our partner governments, but also supporting the design of the projects that the World Bank does with these countries. So, for example, Foster was showing the work they've been doing in Ghana on the small-scale mining. The World Bank has a project with the Ghanaian government on working on small-scale mining. So I think there's probably a link there. We're working on portals to make publicly available data more available, and we're also working with partners to also data that's not necessarily publicly available, make that available to our client countries. So yeah, there's a lot happening outside what we're showing here. So obviously the interests from the FCPF and the ISFL is the climate angle, so helping countries to be able to report on emission reductions, and as part of that, building their capacity to basically report on their emissions and emission reductions in general. So yeah, that's our little focus. But again, there's a lot of other things that other parts of the World Bank do with that same data set.
Of course,
and
they're being enabled.
Yeah, and obviously from the country perspective, I mean, what some people already mentioned, we're doing this from the FCPF perspective to make emission reduction payments, but as a country, you should have some sort of adaptive cycle management of your program. You've done an analysis of drivers, you do certain activities. Is that working? Can I do something better? And that's, I don't think that is something that we see a lot, but obviously that was some of the thinking behind REDD+ in general, that you're not just using that data for reporting your emission reductions, but also to see, are my program measures effective? Have my drivers changed, etc. So I think a lot of the things that Remy and others mentioned should come in and help countries to also help, create more emission reductions, if that's the ultimate goal.
Exactly. Excellent. Thanks, Marco. Very, very good answer. You did well. So we only have a few minutes left. So any final questions that people have, please do pop them in, because if we don't have any more new ones come through, we will wrap up soon. There's been some great discussion happening with typed answers, which I won't read out because the written words can probably do a much better job of explaining, including thanks to Becky Tavini for jumping in to provide some context on the emissions factor common issue which Marco raised. But Marco, back to your point on there's common issues, and it's great to be able to see these emerging now. The countries are submitting results and we're going through the verification process. And I think Jenny Wong from the UNFCCC Secretariat, thank you for asking the question about what we can do, and Remy, thanks for jumping in to answer. And this is exactly what we want the GFOI community to be used for. The point of these information exchanges is to share information and identify areas where we think we can work together as a community, bring together the collective brainpower of the community, and try to develop processes, be it working groups, expert processes, studies, collation of existing knowledge, to try and package together some potential answers or some potential solutions or working examples for countries to use to address these problems. But I mean, Marco, just going back to you on those points that you listed, is there any specific work that's happening at the moment to address those, or are these sort of quite new challenges that are emerging? And is this something that you'd like the GFOI community to take up and to consider?
I don't think there are new issues. I mean, I remember when I started working in Red Plus, and I was working in a country in Asia, and already had the situation that okay, they were planning a new NFI, and the previous NFI had happened, I think, 15 years before that. And it was like totally two isolated events. Nobody had the data anymore of that previous NFI. You couldn't link it up. The design was different. So I think as a community, we already made a lot of progress in trying to get countries to think more about consistent, continuous time series. But I do think that when it comes to this sort of when we get to external scrutiny, I think there's something still missing that we haven't quite done. I mean, we've been focusing very much on getting the best technical data, but okay, how do we store that? How do we make sure it's accessible? How do we indeed create this time, this longer, continuous, consistent time series? I think that might be something that we haven't worked enough on as a community. I must admit. And I think what Becky put in the chat on the what FAO was developing on storing raw data. I think that's a great example. What happened in the past was somebody had data on their laptop when it was on the server, and then that laptop disappeared, or the person left, or the server was reformatted and used for something else, and all the data was gone. So I think this is something that we should be working on more from the bank's perspective. I think this MRV 2.0 might be a way of storing data, but that was not necessarily the direct angle. But yeah, maybe this is something for the next GFOI forum, Tom, to spend a little more time with the partners to think about.
Certainly. Thanks, Marco. I'm very happy to take on board those points and perhaps bring them to the GFOI Leads group to reflect on how we can best try to address them. Remy, I'm not sure if you can jump in here with any thoughts on. I know FAO has the new Aim for Forest projects and the Forest Data Partnership and other things that you refer to. Like, is there scope within these projects to start to look at allocating some resources to tackle some of these common problems? I know Becky answered suggesting that there may be some support available, but are these the kinds of issues that FAO is looking at? Are they included in the Aim for Forest project or the Forest Data Partnership? Do you want to just give a bit of a response on what FAO as the UN body is doing and what new how the community can perhaps look to use the resources that the agency has to try and help answer some of these questions that Marco raises?
Yep, precisely. I mean, Aim for Forest is specifically designed, has been designed to really consolidate all we've been building over the past years on MRV in particular, in monitoring in general. And at the moment in Aim for Forest, we have identified a couple of fast track countries that are at the beginning of the support, but there's plenty of space for more, and we really encourage partners to come towards us and share reflections on where would be most strategic to actually reinforce the good practices, take lessons learned, and exchange. We have all those components inside the project. It's quite a consequent project now. It's a $30 million project for 5 years. So there's really resources, and we really want to tackle better, more coordinated approaches towards data. So on the specific topic of activity data and what Jenny raised, question to Marco on what do we do to make that better. The white paper that we had issued within the GFOI context is also contains lots of recommendations and points to be addressed. We will be carrying like a wide consultation on this within the next year. This is a collaboration with Wageningen University, and we will probably be reaching out to everybody here on the call somehow. So you will hear from this. So there's activities at the global level. There's South-South exchange that are foreseen within Aim for Forest to address those, and also specific work on the SOPs, on the interpretation keys. All those issues have been mentioned by Marco. I think that slide of Marco on the specific points of where we still have issues, I think was super useful. So I look forward to having also that in my set of tools to try to move forward. On forest data partnership, so Aim for Forest really targeting best practices for MRV in general. Forest data partnership, we have also a lot of work ongoing on zero deforestation value chains and how to make sure that smallholders can access those solutions and don't stay behind the digital divide. And here again, I think we see GFOI as a really crucial platform to make sure that approaches to geospatial data and how geospatial data can support compliance towards regulation, that these approaches are shared and that we have a converging idea on how to use the geospatial data to go there. And we see this converging throughout, but I think GFOI would be a wonderful platform to help carry out those messages. I've shared a couple of links and answers to Flavia's question in the chat, but really happy to elaborate further. Anyways,
excellent.
So yeah, plenty of activities.
Thank you, Remy. Great to see this, this new injection of resources and energy into our sector. It's really great as we're starting to get these lessons from experience with countries submitting results and the drawing on these common issues, and there being a pathway for addressing those. And this is exactly what the GFOI community is for, to bring together the world's best minds in our sector to try and work out how we can best solve these. There's a question in the chat as well about is the FAIR concept, FAIR, findability, accessibility, interoperability, and reuse of digital assets concept part of the standards or processes considered? I'll have a quick go at answering that. I don't think the actual direct acronym is. I know that accessibility is. It depends upon the standard that you're referring to. I presume you're referring to carbon standards for some of the results-based payments forums. I don't think that acronym is directly, but certainly some of the principles there in findability and accessibility is certainly part of it, even though maybe that is an acronym that our community looks to adopt. I also just want to refer to Becky's question about this. Still perhaps an opportunity or some work to be done on better linking or better aligning the statistics reported to FRA, the Global Forestry Resources Assessment, to those reported to the UNFCCC and I guess other forums. She at FAO are still seeing some discrepancies there, looking at trying to ensure that we're not necessarily reporting the same figures, but we at least have some sort of comparability or means for understanding why there may be different numbers reported for different forums. This is something that we have long discussed under GFOI and looking to do, and this comparison may well form one of the key themes of the GFOI plenary next year, Becky. So thank you for raising that. I agree. GFOI is always focused on coordinating, I guess, support to countries to be consistent, but also looking at coordinating the outputs and results to ensure there is some consistency or comparability. There is something else that we should be looking at. So please watch this space. It's something I'm interested in pursuing myself, and hope that will become part of the agenda for the next GFOI plenary in 2025. We are very nearly out of time, and I take great pride in finishing these sessions at least 1 or 2 minutes earlier. So I'm going to wrap it up there. If there's any outstanding questions, please feel free to send me an email, and I can refer you on to our panelists or have a go at answering it myself. Please, if you're interested, the final GFOI information exchange for the year will be on next Tuesday for Latin America and Caribbean countries. So my colleague Madison has just posted a link to this in the chat. So if you haven't registered for that, please do, to find out what has been happening in LAC with the same format as this, but for the different region. It's next Tuesday next week, but a few hours later to cater for the time zone. So please do that. There's also a link to the GFOI's new LinkedIn page, which is probably the best way to find out up-to-date information on everything that's happening across the GFOI community. So please follow us on LinkedIn. But just like to say one final thank you to all of our presenters today. Fantastic updates and discussion. Thanks to Remy, thanks Renee, thanks Foster, thanks Marco and Luisa for the fantastic contributions and for stimulating such rich discussions. And thank you to the more than 100 people who joined us for this update today. So thank you all very much. I hope you enjoy the rest of your day wherever you may be, and hope to catch some of you next week for the information exchange on Latin America. Check out the link in the chat if you want to register. Thank you, and bye-bye.